Pause the recording.
Yeah.
Is that uploaded today?
It was written on the 15th, it was written yesterday, so. It's a good 2-minute read.
It was uploaded yesterday and it's in the ordinance one.
Let's see the roll here.
There.
And then I re-registered the yards. The last trial. And then I applied. Crazy.
Okay.
Good evening. Call this meeting to order at 7 p.m., please, and ask Cindy to read the statement of compliance with the Public Meetings Act into the record.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act with the annual notice provided to the Trenton Times, the Hunterdon County Democrat, the meeting notice provided to the members on the listserv, and by posting the meeting agenda on the bulletin board at City Hall and the website. The meeting agenda provides for action items known at the time of posting and is subject to change. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded using the Zoom meeting platform.
May I have a roll call, please?
I cannot talk tonight.
I'll try to be the dog.
Tongue tie. Councilwoman Kaminsky. Councilwoman Lambert.
Here.
Councilman Live.
Here.
Council President Stegman.
Here.
Mayor No.
Here. All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask you to remain standing for a moment to honor our troops both serving here and abroad. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. I would ask for motion to approve the following set of minutes. January 19th, the voting session, January 19th, the closed session, February 2nd, the work session, February 2nd, the closed session, February 16th, the voting session, and February 16th, the closed session. We'll just make a note that the March 2nd work session and the March 2nd closed session are not quite ready for consideration. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about any of the minutes from anybody in the council? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next is administrative reports. Has everybody had a chance to look at the administrative reports before the meeting? Or do you have any questions about any of them?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the administrative reports.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the motion carries. At this time in the meeting, we will open the meeting for public comment. Just a few reminders about public comment in city council meetings. We do ask members of the public to step to the podium unless they have mobility issues. Uninterrupted remarks and or questions from members of the public shall be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by a majority of the council. And that's about it. We typically allow the members who are in the room to speak first, and then we will move on to people who are attending via Zoom. Anybody who'd like to make, and the first comment period is for items on the agenda. So if you would like to speak to something on the agenda, this is the time to do it. The second one is for items that are not on the agenda.
Hi, everybody. Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street.
I just have a couple of questions that might not even be questions, but I know I can't raise them later, so I'm just going to identify now. First, I know it's difficult to keep up with the minutes and stuff, but since we've had discussions about the floodplain thing several times, it's difficult in the public, from the public side, to not be able to go back to official documentation to know some of the things where people are saying, well, I don't think they said that, I think they said, so I'm just asking for that to be thought about in terms of when we ever get the minutes, when it's an active issue. Secondly, in reading the amendments to the Human Rights Council, I just couldn't tell what's being changed because all the things referred back to a 2019 ordinance. So I just couldn't tell what that was. So I probably don't have any questions anyway, but I wondered if we could know the amount of money for the lease for Fisherman's Mark, because this is city property and we're all aware of the fact that we are a city that is in need of money and we can't. I'm asking that now because I don't know what it is and it may come up later. And lastly, in terms of the mapping relative to the floodplain hazard maps, are those, I don't know if those maps are available. This isn't last actually. I don't know if those maps are available anywhere other than people bringing them up on their computers, but it would be great if they were available somewhere so that people would know what counts. And lastly, I would say that the confusion seems to be pretty rampant about what we're actually talking about. The people that I've talked to, we have a lot of, well, no, I'm sure they said, well, I heard them say, no, they said, so whatever education y'all have talked about in the past that you have, and I'm a great supporter of that, I hope you will do something with that before it's actually in final, because people are really not clear other than what they hear other people saying, like, well, you know, this could be a fire, you know, this could be, people don't know what that even triggers or means. I mean, some people I'm sure do, but everybody doesn't. So I'm just hoping that we can make that stuff available as you have talked about in the past as being important. I'm just going with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to address a couple of those things. So the minutes, we get to them as quickly as possible. The last few meetings have been long and the minutes have been very detailed. So we do our best to get them out as quickly as possible. So I understand that there's sometimes a delay, you know, kind of bringing that into your last comment about understanding what people said. I would remind everybody that the meetings are recorded and we typically get them up pretty quickly. The recording's up on the on the YouTube channel almost immediately. So that's a resource that people can take advantage of while they're waiting to review the minutes that get posted a little bit later on. And I know that's not always easy to go through a 2.5 hour meeting, but it is available. And it is obviously an accurate record of the meeting. So so we just say that. The Human Rights Council, I'll ask Councilwoman Lambert to speak to this in a few minutes, but it's basically just paring down the language and tidying it up a little bit. And the Councilwoman did most of the work. We worked together on this, but it really was just kind of cleaning up the language, I think, in terms of the appointment process, how we move forward with, you know, the student appointments, that kind of thing. The lease Fisherman's Mark, their lease, their rent has been $1,000 a month since they signed their lease. And that will continue in the proposed ordinance, which will allow an extension for another 6 months. So that has not changed. The maps, certainly we're happy to keep printed copies of the floodplain maps available in City Hall. People can certainly request them. I'm happy to drop them off at people's houses or put them in the mail. They are available electronically and via paper copy. Happy to accommodate anybody who would like one. So I think that covers all of your points. Is there anybody else in the room who would have a comment?
Good evening. My name is Margaret Carnelli, and I'm here on behalf of Maxwell Assets. And I'm here just briefly to talk about the flood ordinance. I want to thank the mayor, the council members, and all of the other people in Lambertville that have worked on this for the time that they have spent discussing this with us, for obviously the time that was put into the ordinance before it was
ever issued, even in proposed form, and the dialogue that's been going on. We did send a letter this afternoon to council, trying to keep the dialogue going, because we had some questions when we looked at the ordinance, and we were hopeful that there would be a continued dialogue before the second reading and the next, and the public hearing that will be held at that time. And we think that would be valuable to have that dialogue. We also asked in that letter if there could be another public information session, which we would participate in. I realized that the last one was occurring until after it occurred, but we would attend, and that's one reason why I'm here tonight, to show that we would come to a public information session. And we think one could be scheduled without any further delay in moving forward with the ordinance and the public hearing, which I think will be on April 20th. So I think there is time for that with no further delay. And we think it would provide a valuable opportunity just to ask our questions and have them answered and have an interactive discussion. Again, I want to thank all of you for your time on this and the opportunity to be here this evening.
Thanks. And will you just tell us where you live, Ms. Carmelli, please?
Where I live?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I work for
Oh,
Maxwell
great.
Assets. I'm
Okay.
employed by Maxwell Assets, but I live in Millstone, New Jersey.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will note for everybody here that we did receive a letter this afternoon. I actually had a time to digest it. We'll certainly respond to the letter, and we'll give due consideration to everything in the letter. So
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else in the room? Okay. Do we have anybody on Zoom who would like to participate?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like we're good. May I have a motion to close the public comment period, please? So moved. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public comment period, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Steve, did you say yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Thank you. I mean, Council President. Excuse me. Where's my decorum? All right, moving on to resolutions. This is our consent agenda. These resolutions included in the consent agenda are considered routine and are typically enacted by one motion. If there's a member of the city council who wants to seek separate discussion of any item, that item shall be removed and discussed separately. Is there anything that?
I just had one clarifying question on the Sparkle Week ordinance. It says you buy a bulk permit. Is there a separate, is a bulk permit separate from the list of permits that's in it, or those are bulk permits?
They're all
Right,
considered bulk
okay. I
permits,
didn't know if you got
varying
like
amounts.
one, two, because I didn't do it last year.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else from the council? Hearing nothing, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda. Resolutions number 55-2023 through 62-2023.
So
Second.
moved.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. The approval of the bills list. Everybody get a chance to look at the bills this month?
Yes.
I entertain a motion to approve the bills list.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Bills are approved and will be paid. Moving on, ordinances, first reading. The first ordinance under consideration is ordinance 04-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 7, Section 4.4, street sweeping to include the parking lot on the westerly side of the Lambert Free Public Library on Fridays from 8 to 10. So the library lot has never been swept that I know of. So I thought it was a good idea after talking to Department of Public Works to add this in so they can get in there once a week with the sweeper just to tidy up the lot there. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. Okay.
No.
So then I would ask for a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 04-2023. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Moving on to ordinance number 05-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 3, Section 3 through 17, the Human Rights Council. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Lambert for all of her work in getting these revisions underway. And I don't know if you have anything to say about it, Councilwoman. We'd be more than happy to hear your thoughts on it.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, to address Ms. Gleason's questions about what's changed in the ordinance. Essentially, we cleaned up some of the language. There was some date specific, there was some dated information as part of the ordinance that quoted 2000 census data from 2010. And it seemed, it seemed kind of not really fruitful to have that kind of information in an ordinance that you'd have to continually update. So we just took that detail out and just tightened up the description of the introduction. And we made some cosmetic changes to the mission and the purpose. And in there, we basically added the word prevent in terms of promoting diversity and acceptance. We also wanted to make sure that we actively or proactively prevented instances of hate and abuse. So that's kind of what those areas are about. The other thing was down in the membership, there were, the membership was not really distributed properly. There were a certain number of members in the public and private sector, and it just seemed it was out of balance. And it was, given our staffing and the size of our community, the mayor and I looked at the membership, and we actually we reduced the size of the Human Rights Council by 1 member on the public sector side, where there were 2 members of the governing body, and now there's just a single member from the governing body. And we left the number of private sector members at 5. The other thing that we did with respect to membership and the public sector members is, because we have 5 public and 5 private sector members, we'd have an even number of votes. So we made the governing body position a non-voting position. And so that would give us 9 voting positions on the Human Rights Council, with the majority of the private sectors, having full voting rights. The last thing that we did was we took the non-resident requirement and made not resident allowance, rather, not requirement, and made that an optional member, which would be reappointed annually and be a non-voting position. We also made the school district position, or the school student position rather, optional and a non-voting position, and that would serve along the calendar year. And the reason we did that for those 2 particular categories was we didn't want the ordinance to require us to have a non-resident or to require us to have a student, because we might not have interest from either of those areas. So that's basically the sum of what we changed.
Thank you, Councilman. Just note one correction there. You said during the calendar year, the student would be appointed for the academic year.
Oh,
Correct?
yes, thank you. Yeah.
And the last thing I would note was we changed the language in the ordinance to be gender neutral. So it's probably the
We
first
did, yes, thank you.
ordinance we have in the city, and we use the they, them, their language for the ordinance, so that there was some gender neutrality there. Thank you again for your work on that. Are there any questions from the council about the ordinance? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 05-2023.
Am I allowed to move on my own ordinance? Yes, so moved.
All right, right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It carries. The next is ordinance number 06-2023. This ordinance will authorize a 6-month lease with Fisherman's Mark for the farm market located at 260 North Main Street. We extended the lease till June last year. We were unsure of what was going to happen with the farm market. There was some hope that we might be able to make a decision before the lease ran out, but we see that we're still working through that. So I think it's appropriate to extend the lease or to offer a new 6-month lease. Other questions from the council on that? Okay. So hearing no questions, I would ask for a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 06-2023. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance number 07-2023. This is an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Lambertville, amending the City of Lambertville Code of Ordinances to repeal Chapter 19, to adopt a new Chapter 19, to adopt flood hazard maps, to designate a floodplain administrator, and provide for severability and an effective date. So here we are back again, introducing a different ordinance number. There's a memo written by Ken Rogers, who is the floodplain administrator. We'll make sure that gets on the website. Just came to us yesterday. I just want to kind of touch on the highlights of that. In fact, I'll just read it because it'll only take a couple of minutes. The DEP is requiring the adoption of a new flood damage prevention ordinance. It is more detailed by incorporating requirements found in multiple regulations and codes. The city is introducing this ordinance that includes all required DEP language, and it includes elements from our existing flood damage prevention ordinance. There are no changes to requirements, nor are there any more restrictive regulations. Everything in this new ordinance will result in the same requirements for all as specified in our current ordinance. So really nothing's changing. The main points of the new ordinance are as follows. It keeps the 100-year floodplain with the 2 feet of freeboard as a special flood hazard area. It keeps the requirement for the elevation of mechanical equipment to 2 feet above the base flood elevation when there are previous flood losses to that equipment. Number 3, substantial damage and substantial improvement determinations remain as they currently are from the existing ordinance. Number 4, there are no changes to the definition of historic structures. And number 5, variances for any required work that would change the status of a historic structure will be granted through the floodplain administrator's office rather than going to the zoning board of appeals. All other variance requests will still go to the zoning board of appeals. All requirements are only applicable to structures in the special flood hazard area, and thinks that everybody should be encouraged to support the adoption of the ordinance. It's from Ken Rogers, the construction official and our floodplain administrator and our CRS coordinator. So basically what we're doing is we're reverting to exactly what we had before, with I think the one key exception is that the variances are granted or can be granted through the floodplain administrator rather than going to the zoning board, which will streamline the process. It's about $1,000 to go through the zoning board to get a variance in this. So that's the one thing that's changed. Everything else has remained exactly the same as it was in our previous ordinance. Are there questions from the council on this?
Well, actually, I do have a question, but since we're just starting to look at it, evolving questions, but if the floodplain administrator is going to, do the historic status instead of the zoning board has a appeal procedure. So is there going to be an appeal procedure for, so what if Ken says, nah, no, it's not working, how does,
There's always an appeal procedure through the zoning board.
but this is through him. This is, the floodplain administrator is going to be making the determination rather than going to the zoning board. So I was wondering how a homeowner.
Well,
would appeal.
they'll be granted. So they will automatically be granted. So the people won't have to go in terms of those variances.
So I'm just not sure if I understand that. So any application that's made to the floodplain administrator regarding historic status is automatically granted?
Granted?
Correct.
So you could just, so you don't, it's not approved, it's an application. is the standard then.
Yeah, so I would think that as long as you fill out the application and,
Right.
you know, it's gonna be granted.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right.
So I don't really have a question, but just, you know, for discussion, I know we've gotten, you know, a couple of comments, you know, even today from, the attorney from Maxwell Properties. I do think it is a good idea to have more discussion on it. I don't know if that necessarily means we need to change the track that we're on, because obviously we do have to pass this, we're required to do that. I think that, you know, Ken had already prepared a presentation, and unfortunately he was unable to show because of the, you know, the technology difficulties we had that day. So if Ken's available to do another teach-in, I think that would be a great thing, and allow people to ask questions and, you know, have dialogue on it, but still keep on the same track.
Right, and have John come back and he could speak for FEMA, just to kind of, now we have to like rebrand it back to, which is a good thing, to the 100-year floodplain, just to clarify any questions, just
Yeah.
the opportunity, you know.
Yeah, I'm happy to
We
do
have
that.
two meetings.
There are questions that remain. You know, one, in the existing ordinance, we've never looked at the designation of what constitutes a historic structure that contributes to the district, right? So that is something that is, it's a question that came up when we were doing this, and it's, you know, it's an important question. And I think that, you know, we'll certainly talk to Ken about it. Cindy, I don't know if you have anything to say. I mean, we sort of followed up about kind of definition of the historic district. But
We did, but it would be good, and I'm sure Ken would be open to that, to just have that dialogue with the public so that they understand where he's coming from, and that we're all clear on what the definition is and how it's going to be applied.
Right, and then we could notice it again the same way, just so, you know, that in Lambertville matter, so people know to come and do that, because it, you know, everybody.
well, the issue, I think one of the issues is, you know, we may not be able to make a clear legal determination about which properties would be protected.
Right,
So the current list of properties was designated by the DNR Canal Commission, which there's a question even if they have any kind of jurisdiction to make that call. So this is I would just, I think it's a great conversation. I think that we should continue to have it, bearing in mind that, you know, it may exclude houses from protection. And it may not be something that we could completely, comprehensively, effectively, legally address.
right, no, I was just talking about just having a meeting period of
Yeah.
information, question, answer on everything, and that will always be kind of a little out there, as it is today, in
Yes.
terms of what.
And it's ongoing,
all these
right?
designations
Because
are.
if there are private properties, people who, and it's not owned by a government, you can make changes to the facade. So in 1970, you may have qualified, but if you've changed your facade significantly, you may not have a contributing factor anymore.
Well, and on the list, there are many
Or you can go
houses.
back, yeah, right, like, it's almost, yeah, like raising your railings and things, or lowering your railings.
And the classifications on the listing are outstanding, notable, and none, right? So there are a lot of houses in the district that have no contributing, they're not, they have no, they're listed as none, which I think is unfortunate because, you know, it may be a small house that was built in the 1880s or the 1860s. There was a canal diggers, right? It still contributes to the, I mean, I'm talking about myself now, right? This is not a legal definition. Anyway, we're gonna have to wade into this some more. And I think it's a great question, but it's a complicated one. It's not gonna, we're not gonna give some, we're not gonna have any answers about it. At least not initially. Are there any questions or comments from Council President Stegman or Councilwoman Lambert?
Go ahead, Steve. I mean, Councilman, Council President, whatever you want.
When we're home, when we're home, we're one person and more.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The concern that I had is still a concern about how the determination is made and what historic data do we have that designates a property historic or not. And there's one missing piece that I think would be really helpful to have. We have the inventory building by building that is reflected in that map that the mayor just spoke about. And apparently, we don't have a digitalized version of that, but we certainly have five or six files and binders that go into detail about each of the buildings that are referenced in that map. So I think we could use that as some kind of tool to make an initial determination. But it's something that we have, and DNR Canal took a huge initiative to get that done. So we've been trying to locate a digital version of that, which if we can't locate a digital version, then we should scan those and put them into digital. That's all.
Councilwoman, do you have anything?
So I have it really is a dumb question. If everybody is considered, if every property is considered historic, is that a correct understanding? I just need to talk this through for a minute. That's what I've heard, is that everything is historic because we're a historic district. Is that correct?
No,
Yeah. Is that a yes?
I don't think it is. Bill, do you have any-
Okay. So here's my question. Or the other thing I heard was that if you apply for the historic designation, the application process guarantees that you will be granted that designation. So if you have a brand new property just being built right now, as we do in a couple areas, do those property owners get to apply and receive historic designation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea.
Because it seems to me historic should have some context, right? Like, right, I mean, like a house, my house was built in 1920, so maybe there's some historic, context there, but a house that's built in 2022 that was basically built on an empty lot, to me that's a different designation or different set of considerations.
Right. I think really the initial question is, can we use the DNR list? Is there a legal basis for using that list in the framework of this ordinance? So I think that's the first question.
Okay.
We're going to have to research that. If it is, what do we do about, properties that do not have outstanding or notable historical value? Do we, I mean, there are a lot of legal questions here that I can't even begin to answer. Bill, do you have any thoughts?
The land use ordinance, section 903, sets forth criteria and a process for designation of properties. So, I mean, the council is not, I am not the Historic Preservation Commission, but I think just from a quick glance, and I can go into more detail if it's necessary, a quick glance at the criteria, a home built in 2020 is going to have a hard time meeting the criteria. So it's unlikely that homes that don't meet this criteria would be considered or would meet the requirements for designation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we just need to be clear, because when we say things like, well, if they apply for it, they're pretty much going to get it. I mean, that's what people hear,
Are you talking about the variance?
Yes.
Okay.
The variance is different than the designation. So in order to automatically get the variance, you have to have the designation in place.
Right. Yes, correct. Thanks for that clarification, Bill.
Will you send that to me, and circulate it and also try and figure out how to make it part of the packet.
Okay.
Okay, unless, we're definitely gonna have more conversations about this. So, unless there's anything else that's substantive, I would ask for a motion to introduce on first reading. Where are we? Ordinance number 06/2023.
I think it's 07.
I'm sorry, 07. I beg your pardon. Yes, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 07/2023 on first reading?
Make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Next ordinance we're considering this evening is ordinance number 08/2023. An ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 3, Municipal Officers, Procedures, Departments, Boards, and Commissions, adding Article 8, background checks. So this is something that we probably should have done some time ago, just to incorporate all of our employees, contractors, consultants who have regular dealings either in city buildings or in private residential property to have background checks. I don't know if anybody has any questions about this or comments.
No questions, just a comment. I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate you putting this together because we had some discussions about this, and I'm glad we were able to memorialize this.
I have a comment, Mayor. I too agree with this. I think it's a good idea. And I was wondering if we might consider expanding this, maybe not tonight, but consider expanding this requirement. I noticed it's under the section that it's under mentions boards and commissions, right? So would we consider doing it for our boards and commissions for our volunteers? The reason I ask is when I took the risk management seminar this week, they actually recommend that our volunteers have background checks.
I think that's a great possibility. I think we need to look into it a little bit more. We have 105 people that would require background checks.
Key cloth issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I think this is so good is this is people that are actually going into your home to do
Right.
something. And when
Right.
you look at, there's a high risk involved in there. And so when, the government does that, I think it's only fair to make these people pass a background check because they're going in there because under our cover. So I think it's a good idea to look at it for the board. My concern is they're just the costs.
And I would imagine that we also have kind of insurance that would cover any kind of issues that may arise from somebody acting on board with us.
We do a TEO insurance.
Yeah.
Right, well, and then they aren't, our volunteers on our board, the environmental commission aren't going into people's homes, or
Right.
they're interacting the same way that we interact with the public, and we haven't gotten fingerprinted yet. But if you want to, we will.
I
But
would
no.
recommend you do. I think elected officials are a completely separate game from that. It's, the public does the background check. So I think however, the council wants or the city wants to move forward with it, that's one thing that should probably be executed.
Okay, well, I'm happy to put it some more and consider it, but I think that the Councilwoman Kaminsky and Councilman Lyon have made good points here. So,
I have a quick question. When this is, when this becomes an ordinance, is it retroactive to a certain date?
no,
Or if it's in
no,
retroactive.
yeah, I don't think you can do that, can you, Bill?
It wouldn't be, the city's had policies in place for a while and it's continuing to act on those policies. This just complements it.
Did you hear that, Council President?
I think that was there's no reach back. It's just from the ordinance date when it's an ordinance.
Period, right.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments about this?
I just want to, I really appreciate the comments from my fellow council members on this and from you as well, Mayor and Mr. Opal. I just want to make the observation that with respect to volunteers, it's really not just about, I understand the cost factor and that's a consideration. But with respect to volunteers, I don't think we should limit ourselves just to thinking about whether or not they go into people's private residences. You know, there may be something, I don't know, that is something in an individual's background that might prove, I guess, embarrassing for the city if we were to have a person as a volunteer. So I don't know, maybe we find out they're a member of a militant group or, you know, something that we wouldn't really want to have the city's name associated with. That's all.
Here. So may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 08/2023 on first reading?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Ordinance's second reading, or ordinance number 03/2023. This is an ordinance of the city of Lambertville and the county of Hunterdon, New Jersey, providing for the funding of an emergency appropriation to fund various watershed protection improvements in the area of Swan Creek and Ely Creek in and for the city, appropriating $500,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $475,000 in general improvement bonds or notes of the city to finance the same. So just remind everybody, we talked a little bit about this last time. This is an ordinance to fund the special emergency that we adopted in 2022 for the waterways grant received from the USDA. So at this point, I would open up the public hearing. We open up for the public hearing for ordinance number 03/2023 and ask for any public comments there may be about it. Is anybody in the room? Is there anybody in Zoom? Okay, would you make a note for the record of how many people are attending via Zoom tonight?
We have 8 online.
8 online, thank you. All right, since nobody will be speaking from the public this evening, I have a motion to close the public hearing, please.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Is there any further question or comment from the council on this? All right, not, may I have a motion to adopt on second reading ordinance number 03/2023?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. On the correspondence, just a couple of things to note. We got a very nice letter from Donald Park thanking us for recognizing the police department and the fire department for their heroism in the January 2023 fire. And also something from the county of Hunterdon regarding pesticide control regulation, NJAC Title 7, Chapter 30. Do you have any more information about that, Cindy?
If anybody's interested, please contact me. I'll make sure you get a copy of the letter. It's really just their annual notice on the pesticides.
This time, I'm just going to ask Council President Staben if there's any update on Church Street.
I believe that the process is moving forward. I haven't had a conversation with the mayor or Cindy about this, but we're checking to see what type of information we need to supply to the DOT, since one of the intersections intersects to a state road. So until we get that final ruling from them, we will undergo and start the changes. I just haven't heard back on the DEP part. I mean DOT part, sorry.
Thank you. So announcements, we'll read into the record convenience center hours, Saturday, April 1st from 9 to noon, Wednesday, April 19th from 3 to 5, Saturday, April 15th from 9 to noon. I would also note that landlord registration is due no later than March 31st to avoid a late fee of $50. Thank you. And just an announcement about the Tier A MS4 permit. I did find out from the state, from the DEP. I attended a webinar last week with the DEP. The city will be getting $25,000 grant or funding from the DEP for well, it's a total of $75,000. I was gonna get to the other 50,000. It's a two-phase kind of funding initiative. And so we'll get $25,000 as soon as we send in a one-page application, which I think Cindy's probably already done. Done. So as soon as that gets processed through the DEP, they will send us $25,000. That money can be used in as we move forward with whatever requirements we need to meet for the MS4 permit. So it could be everything from personnel hours to software or hardware, to map things, whatever. And then once we complete our stormwater prevention plan, which is due December 31st of this year, we will then receive another $50,000 for further work to bring us into compliance with the Tier A, MS4 Tier A permit. So that's good news. So pleased about that. So now we have our second public participation time. This is for public participation on matters not on the agenda. So if you've got new business or some other business that you'd like to discuss, this would be the time to do it. Okay, nobody in the room? Nobody in online? I have a motion to close the public participation period, please. Public comment
So
period.
moved.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 At this time, I would adjourn a motion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for attending tonight. This short meeting. Yeah. Good to have you on here. Thank you. I know.
Aye.
Bye, thank you.
Aye.
Feel better.
Thank you.